Great. All right. For those of you who weren't here at the beginning, I gave a little preview of the talk to the guys who showed up for the sitting. Basically, that maybe that I don't know what the title of this talk is, what I'll actually post it as, but it could easily be posted as how to turn unhappiness into flourishing, how to turn an unhappy life into a life that flourishes. Okay, and that's really what we'll try to sort of point out and sort of get us going in the right direction for during this 45 minutes. And it's possible. And when I just to give you an example, when I've been to Haiti for now 37 years and haven't been for about 4 years for various reasons, COVID and the insanity going on over there, the pain body over there. But when I first went, my first year, I was really green, and so I was interviewing Haitians with Janine, my interpreter, and I just basically asked them, "What would make you happy?" And not too far into it, I realized that the answer I got most of the time would be to have enough food to feed my family today. And every once in a while, there was somebody said, "Oh, to get a bicycle, to have running water." But mostly, the most common answer was to have enough food for my family today. Very interesting. Yet, when I would bring people over to Haiti from the parish who had never been there, they were sort of struck by how much happiness and joy the people had exhibited. Chances are, if you're on the Zoom, not only do you have enough food to eat today, but you got a computer, you have a lot of Maslow's basic needs met, probably all of them, and but yet people, there's a huge pain body in this country and in the world now, and the pain body leads you to a life of unhappiness. And so, if nothing else, if today's talk accomplishes nothing else, it would be to send you to Eckhart Tolle to read the whole book carefully, and especially chapters 5 and 6, which are on the pain body, because what stands in the way of a human flourishing, species flourishing, planetary flourishing, because we know this planet flourished after several different kinds of extinction. It keeps coming back. It'll come back after what we're going through now. We may not be here as a species. That would, I'm sort of interested in organized human life flourishing because, I got grandkids and such. But the planet is trying to reset into a flourishing mode. And, right now, floods, fires, droughts. This is very extreme because we've just heated up the planet, and species not surviving, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of existential planetary pain that surrounds us, and you can't shut that out. The pain body, as Eckhart talks about it, is an energy body. The Tibetans see all bodies as energy bodies. They have a whole view of that everything is energy in a different form, and it all has a wavelength. And the pain body, as we'll look, I want to talk about, why we have one, just sort of gleaning parts from Eckhart. Why do we have a pain body? And then what is it exactly? Hopefully in the first 20 minutes I can cover that. And then in the second half of the talk, concentrate on how we transform it, because everybody's got one. It could be, some of us have kind of active pain bodies, which are part of our daily life, and some of us have more dormant pain bodies that are laid back, but every 2 or 3 weeks come out to feed, as they say, just sort of like vampires. but we all have one. And the question is how to work with it consciously. We have one because we've been unconscious about the pain in our system, the frequency of pain. Yeah. So a little bit about why we would have one at all. Uh, Eckhart, and really one of the remedies for this whole thing, one of the best remedies would be to give a very careful meditative reading of this book, especially chapters 5 and 6. Hopefully, if you don't have the book, you can pick up a used one and get after it. Now, the good news is there's other energies in our bodies that counteract this. And in future talks, I'm going to talk about and try to work up a vocabulary for this thing called soul, this energy body called the soul, which people don't talk about. You don't even hear it preached from the pulpit. But the soul is all about flourishing. It's in you. It's part of you. You have this energy realm in you, this energy body of the soul that is constantly wants you to flourish, wants you to go from like an acorn to a mighty oak. That's the flourishing of an acorn, you see. It wants you to become absolutely who you're meant to be, and then be that in the world. You know, he says finding your life's purpose. Well, it's a spoiler alert. It's to flourish. It's to become exactly who you're meant to be, and be that in the world, whatever unique way that is. And it's the opposite of unhappiness. Thich Nhat Hanh was so happy because he found his way to flourish in the world. The Dalai Lama can be happy. Haitians can be even happy when they find their way to flourish, even in immense pain all around them. And we're going to have to learn how to do that if we're going to help the earth reset, and if we're going to remain a viable species here. And Eckhart, more than anybody else, is on this beat. That's why he calls it a new earth, because we are part of that. Okay. Now, in the 17th century, when enlightenment and science started coming on the rise in Europe, and then, we're still, 3-4 centuries into that whole scientific revolution thing. Rene Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am." And I don't know if he believed that or he was just saying what the zeitgeist was, but I think, therefore I am. Now, it's really ridiculous. For Eckhart will sort of demolish that. It'd be like saying I digest, therefore I am, or I circulate my blood, therefore I am. This thinking just happens. At some point in evolution, it happened. There was a whole long stretch of human evolution where we didn't have words. How could we have thought as we know it without words? That's an interesting philosophical little conundrum. Can you actually have thought without words? Which came first, words or thought? It's an interesting question. But we live as sort of hominids. As our brain developed, we eventually could, instead of pointing to things, we could say computer or, Apple or Tarzan, you Jane. It sort of developed that way. But for a while, we lived in a sense, there was a huge silence up there. There weren't all this. There wasn't the voices in your head talking all the time, which is really what the ego is. Ego's a choir of voices, you see, and some of them functional, some of them dysfunctional, some of them in the duty. When you get into the mind, you always got double. You always have good and bad, light and dark, and so there's functional voices in the ego that are helping us survive and for flourishing, and then there are dysfunctional voices. And if you get that chorus of dysfunctional voices, that's what Eckhart is pointing out, and he calls it the pain body. He stresses that most just look at your own mind for a minute. That's why I want you watching your mind during this whole thing. He says most thinking is involuntary, autonomic, repetitive, sort of like static, if you know what I mean. And not all, but most. In most of us, it's just these things, just these voices keep running in the head. And what he calls, what's running the show? Who are you really? when you identify with your thoughts, then you're in Descartes' bag. I think, therefore I am. My first Zen master, Suzuki Roshi, said he laughed at that. He said, "Oh, I am, therefore I think." He says Descartes had it backwards, and I think he was right because thinking just happens. You can't really control it. It just happens, like circulation, like like respiration, like all these systems in the body. And Eckhart uses the word the intelligence. He says the intelligence is running the show. Thinking is only a very tiny part of it. So he's saying Descartes not wrong. We identify. There's somebody, human beings, who identify with these thoughts in the head. That's who I am. But we're much bigger than that. He would call it the intelligence. Buddhists might call it awareness. Um, you know, Christians might call it God. You can give a label to it, but there's something bigger than these thoughts in the head, and you're not those. You do have them. It's like you have a car, but you're not a car. Say. So he's trying to tease that out and get you aware that those thoughts in your head aren't you. Don't identify them with so much. Now, the ego is, of course, the voices in the head that pretends to be you. It's a case of mistaken identity. That's what the Buddha is talking about all along, that we've mistaken who we are. It's then the person we think we are is too small. Thinking is just a small part of what he would call awareness. See? And also, it's not just the thoughts, it's the unobserved emotions that get into the mix. What are emotions? We got to look at what our, he'll work through what are instincts and emotions. Before we had words and thought, we definitely had instinct. Think of yourself as a baby, think of any baby, and then think of human beings evolving. They had instinct, which meant they could be aware of what would give them pleasure and what would give them pain. That's what instinct is, and it's into the it's about the outside world. So you avoided places that were painful, and you avoided objects that were painful. Early hunter-gatherers, mostly the women, they would taste the berry a little bit, and then they'd know if it was they just tasted a little bit, and they were trying to figure out, can I eat that? And then some ate the wrong berries and they died. All right, well, the memory remembers that. That's helpful. Memory, it's not memory's the problem. It's the fact that we store all these painful thoughts. It's like storing thousands of text messages, and we carry them along with us like baggage, So that's why you don't want to get rid of the ego, because the ego, part of the ego is it helps us survive in time and space. You remember, don't eat those berries. So-and-so died with those. Or don't go to that place. That's where we got ambushed by the other tribe. So memory has a survival value. Instinct has a survival, but instinct is about something in the real world that threatens you or pleases you. Thought's different. And emotion is, in most cases, egoic emotion is we have a thought and then the body reacts. See, the body can't differentiate between, saber-tooth tiger there in reality and thinking, well, there might be a saber-tooth tiger somewhere. It's the same thing, and so it does all the thing, gets ready to run and all that. And so the egoic emotions are the body's reaction to thoughts. For instance, this actually happened one time. I was giving a retreat, and I was up earlier than retreatants, and I got everything fixed. And so I just laid down on the Zendo floor to catch a few winks before I had to wake everybody up. Well, I fell asleep, and then one of the retreatants came out of the Magdalene room there and saw me lying on the floor, and she thought I was dead. And so her body went into all kinds of, and she came over to me, and I woke up. And so when she knew I was alive and just sleeping, well, but that was a total, it was just a thought in her head. He's dead. Her body went into all this reaction, you see. I still remember the smile there. But that's a good example of how, the thought that a rhinoceros might blow through this door and gore me That's what anxiety is. It's not. There's difference between healthy fear and just this kind of mental chatter that's negative, that's scary. You see. So first of all, there's instinct, and then there's egoic emotion, as well as the thought realm, and the egoic emotions are connected with the thoughts. Okay. Um, I'm going to read. So that's sort of where it comes from, and we store these because obviously painful experiences in the world before we were really in the thought realm too much. Painful experiences, you want to store those because you want to avoid them. You want to survive. And there's something about the human brain that painful experiences and thoughts tend to be like Velcro. We save them and we carry them, and then pleasant things, somehow it's more like Teflon. It rolls off, and so then we end up storing a lot of pain. Things happen. People die. Uh, Nobody has two Buddhas for parents, And when if you're a little baby and your parents or father comes home drunk and there's beats up your mother or something, you absorb that. And there's a thing called collective pain, ancestral pain that we have absorbed. Kids come in and we are newborn and we are open for a little bit, but that pain body from the previous existence, from maybe even our ancestors, it's all in there, and it's unconscious, of course. That's what we're trying to do. Eckhart's trying to help us learn how to work with all this collective pain we're carrying around. Maybe ancestral pain. My grandfather and grandmother left Italy because they were starving. It was after World War I. They couldn't have no work, and they were starving, so they came over here. All of us came from somewhere else, and there's that pain is there. You don't know about it, but it's working. Okay. And I'm going to read a couple of things straight from Eckhart, 3 little short quotes that really, to me, I had a bunch of them, but I really boiled it down to give you a feeling of how this all works. The first one says, it's about the source of the pain body. He says, any negative emotion that is not fully faced and experienced as it arises does not completely dissolve. It leaves behind a remnant of pain that accumulates and adds to your pain body. Any negative emotion that is not fully faced and experienced as it arises does not completely dissolve. It leaves behind a remnant of pain that adds to the pain body. And then he says, because of the human tendency to perpetuate old emotion, almost everyone carries in their energy field an accumulation of an old emotional pain, which I call the pain body. It's this accumulation of pain, and that we rerun. Who hasn't rerun an argument? A grudge is just the replaying of that movie over and over, and when it's triggered. And then here's the last thing he says: the pain body is a semi-autonomous energy form that lives within most human beings and is made up of painful emotions. Like all life forms, it periodically needs to feed, to take in new energy. It feeds on negative thinking and negative energy. Now, some people have, if it was an Enneagram thing, I could talk about the different temperaments and how they tend to be active pain bodies or sort of dormant pain bodies. But everybody's pain body has to feed sometime, and it feeds on pain. And when you have physical pain or something painful happens, that's the time that the pain body will be there and then add to it. I just shake my head at the first 10 days after the knee operation, how much physical pain there was, but the worst thing was how much negative pain body came out at that time. And I was thinking must be doing it all wrong, and oh gee, I'll never write again, and this was a big mistake. Those things. I told the group that was here before, we broke for breakfast, to pay attention during the session, and especially during the empty session where you're sort of eating or whatever. Pay attention to every negative thought that comes up and write it down. I did that one time. I'm going to read you a few of them. I was making a retreat with a couple of Dutch Zen masters, Hans and Truus, up in Ohio. And the basic thing was we sat facing a blank white walls with our eyes half open for hours during the day. So a lot of, you don't stop. It's not about stopping thinking or anything. It's, and so I just decided before this 5-day sit that I was going to just, whenever I came out of just present and just consciousness into thinking, I was going to notice what took me out of it. And I was especially going to notice if it was had a negative, it was a negative thought. And then at the end of this, we were sitting doubles and triples, 20 minutes walk, 20 minutes walk, 20 minutes walk, bell. We were sitting mostly triples. And so that was a lot of time. And so, the idea is you bring your mind back to just presence, consciousness, awareness, but I would pay attention to what took me out of it. And so after the end of every triple, I would go right down the negative thoughts, basically the pain body material that came up. And it turned into one of my longest poems ever. It's called Voices from Hell. And I'll read you a few of them just to give you the flavor of this. And you'll recognize some of these some of the pain body infantry here. During a Zen sesshin, you sit for hours facing a blank white wall in silence. Whenever you leave the present moment, as you bring yourself back, you can note the voice that lured you away. When Jesus exorcised the demons, he called them by name. That's the important thing about being able to write these down and say, okay, I know that's pain body material. He called them by name. He exercised them by name. The demons didn't like it either. They said, wow, who told you my name? Interesting. I called mine in this poem the Voices from Hell because that's what they are. Oh, here's some of them. There's something wrong with you. You've never been good enough. You should be in control at all times. If you're not in total control, you should be ashamed of yourself. Be sure to finish all your work before you go out and play. You are what you do. You can do better than that. Be a good boy and they'll love you. Be perfect, they'll adore you. If you don't get paid, it isn't work. It's a hobby. The bottom line is still the bottom line. You should be able to please all of the people all of the time. Some of you know those. Those are pain body. That's pain body chorus there. And it goes on. I've got more. It's unbelievable. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there. If you don't look out for number one, you'll end up penniless, living under the overpass with newspapers for blankets. I mean, that was a kind of opera there. That was a kind of opera. Here's the ending of it. Life is just one problem after another. No, that's wrong. You got to work on this. Practice makes perfect. Time is money. He should, she should, they should, it should. I should be concerned about what others might think of me. The beatings will continue until morale improves. And there's just too many, that's why you pay attention to these things. And you realize, okay, that's the pain body singing there. That's that chorus. You don't believe it. And then I closed the thing saying, when I believe any of these voices, or on the other hand, when I struggle to rid myself of them, it's the other fork in the road. When I believe in any of these voices, or on the other hand, when I struggle to rid myself of them, I immediately descend into the depths of hell. See, when I was talking about when you believe in any of these voices, you identify with this voice. That's you talking, that's the truth. And that's never the case. Or if you decide you want to get rid of them, good luck. you immediately descend into the depths of hell. That's why I call them the voices from hell. But when I can simply recognize the voices and just let them be, recognition is, the Tibetans say recognition and liberation is simultaneous. That's one of the great Tibetan little one-liners. Recognition and liberation is simultaneous. Because when you say, oh, that's just a pain body, then that's like saying, well, that's not me. That's part of me. It's trying to convince me, try to seduce me into it, but that's not me. And you don't have to get rid of anything. Recognition and liberation is simultaneous. And to recognize, you have to be conscious. But we're not always conscious. And then, those voices come up, you'll never be happy. I had one person that said, I'm just a hopeless depressive. And, well, there's some truth to that in terms of, everybody, they say, oh, you've got to take this pill, change your body chemistry. That might be some of it. But they just bought that term. See, these are people who have a very active pain body, and it's going all the time. I mean, none of this is really exciting stuff here. It's pretty depressing when you believe that's who you are, when you believe the voices. When I can simply recognize the voices and just let them be, they all eventually dissolve like clouds, revealing blue sky, nothing but the vast blue sky. They're just energy forms. We're not that solid either. Nothing is solid according to either physicists or Buddhists. They say these are all forms of energy, and so you decide who you want to entertain, and because there's plenty of positive thoughts. There's plenty of, and we'll sort of work with that. So. But that's, be paying attention to yours. I bet you heard some that you entertain, and they sort of capture you, and then then you're in a different vibration. Pain body thoughts are a low vibratory thing, and positive thoughts are at a much higher vibration. Yeah, if you ever think of death metal. Who is this attracting? Well, teenage boys who are, just got to do something with all this, and then, there's all kinds of music, all kinds of vibrations, you see. So there's a true sense, if you got a real active pain body, you'll create situations that produce pain, and then it feeds. It's all because we're unconscious to it. So if nothing else, just even to be thinking about it, give a careful reading. In The Power of Now, which is a brilliant book, Eckhart details the pain body in 6 pages. In The Power of the New Earth, he gives it 60 pages. So it's much more in depth. And I think if there's any human beings around 100 years from now, what will last is his understanding of the pain body. I never saw anybody who had that, and that's his legacy, just to make people aware of that. So now, what can you do with it? There's 3 things you can. There's 3 ways you can deal with the pain body. The first thing is, and I got them sort of worked them out over here, so I'm going to give it to you sort of straight. First thing is you can react when a thought comes up and your pain body's triggered. Somebody does something that triggers your pain body, you react. Now that's unconscious, okay? And when you react, according to the Enneagram, the Enneagram's a good. How do you react? Well, you can react in avoidance. You can just take your mind off of it. You can sweep it away. You can do any number of things to avoid the emotion, this painful emotion. You can be aggression. You can be aggressive to it. So there's the avoidance types, the 5, 6, 7s, the aggressive types, the top of the Enneagram. There's a lot of ways to be aggressive that look positive, or you could just attach to them and really identify with them. Those are all unconscious. You don't want to do those. We pretty much do that a lot. That's how we build up the pain body. identification can be total. And it becomes a vicious cycle then. Because, you know, the interesting thing about relationships and family is this is like the golden corral for the pain body. I mean, it's just, when you're, family get-togethers, family in general, and then if you're in an intimate relationship, these are the places that the pain body just lying on the edge of the terrain, just waiting to go, and uh, they can spark it at any moment. Uh, because you care about these people, or you're dependent on these people, and they have pain bodies too. There's the interesting thing he says. He says if you get married, you don't just marry this man or this woman. You marry their pain body, and they marry yours, and nobody knows this. Nobody knows this. That's why after the honeymoon is over, and you say, "Well, who is this guy?" You know, who is this woman? I didn't, because the pain body eventually comes out, you know, and when there's two pain bodies, one triggers the other. And we've all had those moments with people we love or we're close to, our family members, where it's just somebody says something. Who even knows what it is? You usually can't remember it at the end. But then there's two pain bodies triggered, and and that is Thanksgiving dinner for your pain body. The pain body is getting replenished when that happens, and it's all unconscious. The pain body feasts and grows stronger. Now the second way, and that's what we mostly do because we don't have any training in it. You said this, and blame, and then it's maybe you make up later, and it's sort of you forget it, and then the same thing. That's why you get in the same argument over and over. It's not really logical argument. It's the pain bodies. See, so if one person in the setup understands it, then you could actually be conscious during that time. So what would it mean to respond rather than react when somebody says something that and you feel it triggering something in you? What would it be to respond at that moment? Okay, well, it would be first of all to know that that's the pain body, and then I'm not going to react. Okay, and you feel you face the emotion that's coming up. Maybe shame is coming up. Maybe anger is coming up based on what they said. Maybe jealousy, envy. It's all the what they call the deadly sins, the passions. They're all forms of the pain body that can come up. Say, so maybe it's jealousy. Maybe it's just rage. Well, you have to face that emotion in yourself first, and then you have to feel it. I wasn't raised that way. You probably weren't raised that way. Because when if you feel angry and then you shout, you motherfucker, that's not feeling the emotion. You're giving it to them. See, so there's a sense you have to have a little bit of space created. You see. That's what we're working on with meditative practice is space. You see, having just a little space so you don't go right into the unconscious, response. You said, no, and then so you have to feel the emotion. You have to say, all right, well, really, there's really a lot of anger in me now. And that's valid. So if you can be aware of it, face it, and if you can feel it, and then. Shantideva, one of the great Tibetan guys, says at that moment, if you have a stick handy, put it in your mouth, because anything you say at that point is going to further the pain body, and so it's tricky especially when you're in these face-to-face things with family or your husband or wife or your partner, just not saying anything and just realizing first of all what's happening in you. You're feeling belittled. You're feeling invisible. These kinds of feelings, and feel it. Don't do anything until you faced it, and you can feel it, and you can sort of let it flow on. See, so it's not trapping it. to put in your hurt locker to later you'll pay that person back. That's how we do it. No, you don't stop it at all. You don't, it doesn't become you, it goes through you. That's the guest house Rumi was talking about. You let it go through you. So you might not be able to reply, and that stops the whole thing right away. And so he has a lot to say about how it works in relationships. He has a lot to say about the pain body in a feminine pain body as opposed to a masculine pain body. They're very different. Feminine pain body, when you feel that pain and there's no way to get out of it, young girls cut on themselves. They inflict pain on themselves. And young boys get an AR-15 and shoot up their fourth grade classroom. You hurt somebody out there, see. That's just sort of a norm. And then there's the girl, boy, she was a girl in body, but she had the insides was a masculine pain body. That was a young girl who shot up the school in Nashville. But that's normally the way it is. It hasn't always been like that. Thousands of years of female oppression has probably caused that. So it caused the female pain body to be somewhat different. He talks about all that. He talks about it in relationships. It's such a valuable reading. It's helped me a lot. Now, how do you preempt the pain body? It's sort of like using a prophylactic with sex. How do you preempt it? And that would the big category would be to have meditative practices. Again, meditation to the pain body is like radiation or chemotherapy to a kind of tumor, kind of malignant tumor. So develop, and Tibetans guided me on this. Before they even got people to meditate and learn to sit and all that, they helped them develop a positive view of reality. That's why they always start with the view. And if you have a positive view of reality, then you can deepen it and solidify that with meditation techniques. If you have a negative view of reality, then all the meditation in the world will do would just actually solidify that. Bob Thurman said one time, if you take a neo-Nazi and put him into a 5-day sesshin, he'll come out a stronger neo-Nazi. Chances are. Because meditation tends to solidify what you've got and make it solid. And so you want to solidify a positive view. And we all didn't come out of childhood with a flourishing. Though when people come to the Loose Leaf Hollow, maybe they don't even know me. This is the first time they came here, at least in the past. And what they were hit first was a view of flourishing. They park their car and they see the gardens. And my wife does that. She works on the outside. She's the first person to hit them. And these aren't English gardens. These are gardens that are sort of wild, but they're flourishing. They're just beauty, beauty, beauty. Ron here helps her out. And that's the first thing. There's a sense of flourishing here. This is a space for grace that the essence of you can flourish here. And they see that before they even come inside and get any of the meditation work. That's the thing. Is your view of the world one of flourishing or one of poverty and fear? Many people had that coming out of kind of childhood. And Einstein, who probably looked at deeper than most guys, he said the most important question, it's a question about the view, is the world a friendly place or not? People might not always be friendly. People do. But we got to remember, people are often insane, or it's the pain body. I mean, what guys are in prison because they had a pain body attack for a minute or two and they did something, and now they're doing 30 years to life just because they didn't understand that there are these things. But in each of us is a soul. that it's I call it the SLA, the Soul Liberation Army. We have the soul that's trying to liberate us from all this unhappiness and all these obstacles to actually growth, flourishing. So that's the ace in the hole. Now a lot of people will say there's no ghost in the machine, just cells, blood, tendons, and whatever. And when you die, that's it. Well, that's another view. My brother had a sort of well, he married his first wife for 7. He was with her for 17 years. On her wedding day, uh, underneath her wedding gown, she had this T-shirt that she loved to wear. Life's a bitch, and then you die. Well, he married the view. You know, that's a view that has reeks of pain body. Or you could say, you know, life's short. Grab for all the gusto you can right now. You know, there are like commercials. You know, whoever dies with the most toys wins. That's a view of life that we have. That's where greed comes in. You know, who needs all this stuff? Well, if that's your view, uh, whoever dies with the most toys wins. Because when we die, it's over, and then you know those are views of life. And then there's other views. Tibetans teach the view of flourishing. If you ever do the jewel tree practice before you sit, it's a view of flourishing. You see, Jesus said he came to give you life in abundance. You see, so a lot depends on your view, and then once you got a view, then meditation practices can really help. Just the sitting meditation helps because you start to get to know what takes you out of the present moment, what takes you out of this now. And it'll always be going to the past or future. That's how you know, because that's where the realm of thought goes, takes you into the past and the future. When you're now, you're just aware, you see. So you can start to recognize these thoughts. And that's why you lay aside thoughts during the time of meditation. You're practicing trying to find out, well, what, if my intention is just to, when thoughts come, just let them go and just stay in the present. What does that practice do to you? And also another meditative practice is a lecture, what they call lectures, sacred reading. What's it like to start your day reading a paragraph of Eckhart Tolle or Teresa of Avila, or the Lao Tzu, reading one of the things from the Tao. Start your day with a voice that's different than these voices in the head, and listen to that for a day. And then another practice is, after you read this, Merton practiced this. Merton showed me how to practice this. After as you're reading a book, he said the purpose of reading the book is not to finish the damn book. The purpose is when you read something that sounds like wisdom, you then open your notebook and you start writing off of it. And he was true to that in the Asian Journal, which he was writing as when he died in Bangkok. He brought about 12 books with him. He must have had a whole suitcase full of books and a suitcase full of clothes. And as he'd read the book, if he hit something that resonated with the heart, he'd write 2 or 3 sentences, and then he'd write his response to those. That's much of what the Asian Journal is. And he had reading notebooks because he couldn't overline or underline or anything because he was getting these books from the library at UK and U of L. And so he has all these reading notebooks, and Bellarmine in Louisville is going through them, and they'll be published. You'll be able to see what he thought of when he read these lines from Jacques Maritain or whoever he was reading. So that is that's a proactive, flourishing thing to read. To always have Julian Norwich in your ear, or Merton or the Dalai Lama or someone like that, Pema. See, read a little bit in the morning and then write off of it. Okay, just as when you sit, you have sort of a positive mind as you go into the sitting, and then more positive stuff can come out. And you could write after the sitting. The voice on the page that's yours, as you write, after you sit, that's a great practice because you'll see a lot of pain body on the page. And then you'll know it's not you. because it's on the page now. You can be aware of it. That's what saved Eckhart. Eckhart got on this road when we'll close with this one. He was didn't have any spiritual training whatsoever. He was like a in business, and but he pain, but he had a strong pain body, and the voice said to him, "Well, why don't you just kill yourself? You're not worth a damn. Nobody would miss you. Just get out of all this pain. Just kill yourself." And he was at that point, and then something clicked inside his head. He said, "Well, there's this voice telling me to kill myself." And then here I am aware of that voice. He says, "There's two of us. Maybe one of us is lying." And then he sort of passed out. He passed out. And when he woke up in the morning, he's a rare character. When he woke up in the morning, opened his eyes, everything was like shining like the sun, kind of luminous, like Merton had on the street corner for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Well, he had that state for 6 weeks, and he just left his job, didn't even bother to tell him. He just was following the. He just walked out. He sat on a park bench pretty much for 6 weeks and just watched people walking by in their luminous state, clouds in their luminous state. And then when that faded, he didn't have any cognitive structure to even hang that experience on. So then he started reading spiritual literature, and he sort of found a structure that fit that explained that experience in Advaita Hinduism, non-dual Hinduism. And then he said, "Well, what do I do with this?" And then he would start writing The Power of Now. Yeah, I had no money up in British Columbia, just writing the book. And he was about finished with the book, but he was totally broke. And he went to a local place and did the Powerball, and he hit about $2,000 off this Powerball, which gave him enough money to finish the book. And now it's ours. So if nothing else, if you got the book, you think about it sometime now, if you like, The Power of Now. Start to reread it slowly, closely, and you really get the details on this stuff. If you want to just read chapters 5 and 6 on the pain body, you can go right to them. I definitely think that'd be worth it. Well, all right. Well, let's take a break, and we can end the recording now.